All right. Good morning. Welcome to this Metro Plan Orlando MAC meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is John Dallas, and I'll be chairing this meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly for us in the room and those listening in online. As we continue to meet in person, all committee members are required to be present here in Metro Plan Orlando boardroom, while staff will continue to stream our meetings online for the public access. Now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mayor Anderson, would you like to lead us?
Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, a couple housekeeping things. First, let's welcome Longwood Commissioner Brian Sackett. I believe this is your first meeting here.
I've been online for the other.
Okay, well, welcome. It's good to have you. This morning, we'll keep microphones muted unless you've been recognized to speak. I do ask that all committee members activate your microphones before speaking and turning them back off when you are complete. As a reminder, the microphone is turned on and off by pressing the blue button, the one with the little talking face icon on it, located on the screen in front of you. There are two public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public participating virtually who want to speak will use the raise hands feature in the Zoom screen. If attending by phone, you can hit *9 to request to be recognized. We also accepted comments by email and phone message before the meeting. The guidelines for the public comment are posted at metroplanorlando.org/virtual meetings. We want this and all future meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablet, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact Metro Plan Orlando. The November Metro Plan Orlando board meeting, which is next week, was canceled because of Hurricane Nicole. So I will be representing MAC on today's meeting, as well as the October meeting with the board meets on December 14th. Let's see. Finally, today marks a notable staff change at Metro Plan Orlando. Mr. Keith Caskey, Manager of Planning Services, has been a constant presence at the MPO. He's retiring at the end of the month, so this will be his last MAC meeting. Metro Plan Orlando staff has prepared a short video tribute for Keith, which we're going to play now.
Long before there was Metro Plan Orlando, there was Keith Caskey. Also known as the man with the plan. Keith has marked more than 40 years in transportation planning in Central Florida. His work helped define how Central Florida transportation grew and evolved. On Keith's watch, we have expanded our transportation options and found new ways to get around the region. Keith has overseen it, and best of all, explained it for us. That's why we also think of him as the man at the podium. At hundreds of public meetings, Keith has been the one explaining our transportation improvement program. He speaks fluent FDOT. Keith is central to everything we do, but he's never one to grab the spotlight. He just stays in the background, getting things done. But today, we are focusing on Keith because he's leaving us. Yes, he's leaving us for a well-deserved retirement. Best wishes, Keith. We'll miss you.
You've seen a few changes here. Wow, 40 years. Incredible. Incredible. At this time, I'd like to recognize Alex Trauger of Metro Plan staff for agenda review.
Good morning, Chair Dallas, committee members and everyone else participating online. Kind of jumping right into that, Council Member Davitt and Lake Mary Commissioner Jordan Smith were not able to attend physically today and have joined us virtually. And as such, have requested an excused absence at the appropriate time on your agenda, Mr. Chair. After a quorum is confirmed, you guys can take that up. Also relating to the printed agenda, Rakinia Hinson will be filling in for Catherine Alexander for DOT District 5's portion of the FDOT work program presentation. So in the presentation section of the agenda. And also just kind of in general, as we kind of close out the year, I just wanted to give you my thanks, and on behalf of staff, thanks for participating in our regional planning process, throughout the year, adding value to that and providing kind of your local municipal perspective and in the bigger picture. So we do appreciate your participation in that. So Keith mentioned, he does have a presentation on the agenda later, his final tip amendment to the MAC and to the board. So he'll take that up later. But a very lighthearted video to recognize Keith, but he's someone that certainly has been behind the scenes since my time, and I do want to give him my thanks there. I've been with the MPO for almost 15 years now, and he's been kind of that steady presence, kind of learning and has really helped kind of our junior staff and kind of taking that next generation of the team. So I do want to recognize Keith and give him that honest appreciation there. Other than that, we do not have any other changes to the printed agenda, and I'll ask Ms. Goldfarb to call the roll.
I'll ask all committee members to keep microphones muted until called. Anderson,
Here.
Guthrie,
Here.
Gardner, Davitt,
Here.
Dallas,
Here.
Sackett,
Here.
Gerstner,
Here.
Foraker, There you go.
Here.
Henson,
Here.
McCann,
Here.
Ramos,
Present.
Pladek,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
that concludes the roll call, Mr. Chairman, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Goldfarb. Couple things I wanted to, we'll take a motion regarding excuse absence, but one was for our last meeting. Councilman Ramos had contacted me, but I was here late and didn't get to make the motion. So we'll take this in two different motions. Then I move that to note for the minutes that Sal Ramos was out of town and unable for an excused absence of the meeting of November 3rd.
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. We also need a motion to excuse the absence of in-person absence. Is that the case, Alex?
Yeah, currently the bylaws are very vague, and it's how we've approached the past few meetings since we've come back to in person, that if you're not able to attend physically, you are able to participate virtually, but your participation is marked as an excused absence. That's been our kind of operating procedure for the past few months. So that's how we've handled Councilmember Davitt's last month, Commissioner Sackett's as well last month, participating virtually. Councilmember Ramos, and then the two today, Councilmember Davitt and Commissioner Smith. But again, at the discretion of the MAC.
So that may be a discussion we may need to have at some point, just to maybe clarify what that is. Obviously, we don't want people ongoing, not attending and just come, attending because we need to have you here for a vote. But I think it's just meant, when we passed that or when we adopted that bylaw, it was primarily because we had council members who were just not coming. They weren't communicating. They were not involved. So we wanted to make sure that sometimes when they have absences, and it was to kind of shake loose that kind of dead weight, if you will, and get someone new. But at the same time, we don't want to encourage people not attending in person and just opting for the online because they can't vote there. But so at some point we might need to clarify or do something and put that on the agenda.
Right, the MAC does have their bylaws review per your bylaws. Your review takes place in May, June of next year. I'll make note of that. Sarah and I will make note of that. So when we're entering into that process, maybe we use that kind of, that timing to provide, more clarity on that front. But yeah, we absolutely would love to have you here in person especially to achieve that physical quorum that we need to take action. If you cannot participate, we do want you to still join us virtually if you can. I will say though, per the bylaws, the excused absence is just that. So it doesn't count negatively against you. It's just for our record keeping purposes. We will also note, Lisa and I have talked about this for the board. We in the future, we can make note that kind of like a / participated virtually, just so the minutes in the record reflects your actual presence, whether virtually or in person. So until we get something more formal in bylaws, I think how we're operating now, and if we can all just kind of, do our very best to join in person. And if you can't join in person, have your alternate participate. And if you don't have an alternate, let us know and we can get you to have an alternate so we can have ideally someone in chair. And if not, virtual is kind of that third option, but we definitely want to have you participate one way or the other. So we appreciate it.
There's something we should bring back up later in the agenda or number of comments to this out. That kind of direction that maybe the board wants to go, then put it on a later agenda for a vote.
If that's the Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if that's the prerogative of the committee.
Typically, when we have in May, when we have the nomination committee meet, they also review the bylaws. I mean, that's the normal process, and we just have them try to hash it out and make a present and then present the recommendations to the board.
So at that time.
So we could do, yeah. I don't think this is an emergency. I think it's what we're trying to do is encourage everyone to use the attendance virtually as a last resort as opposed to a first resort. And we can just verbally exhort people to do that at the moment. Do we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Davitt and Councilmember Smith who are participating virtually?
So moved.
Oh, gosh. And I think was that Councilmember Foraker?
Yes.
Or Mayor Foraker, and who was the second? We have a second? Okay, and Mayor Henson seconded that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. All right. We will now hear public comments on any items. Do we have people who want to speak to any of these items? If so, please use the raise hands function on your screen or press *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your microphone. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Accept that prompt to activate your microphone. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record. Please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. Are there any comments at this time?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Goldfarb. Are there any comments that were submitted before the meeting?
We have not received any in advance or written comments.
Great. Okay, now we're going to agency partner reports. So let's start with Ms. Henson I believe that you might, do you have a comment now or are you coming up later in the, go ahead.
Good morning. I'll just give brief comments. I'm Rakinia Henson. I'm making the presentation for work program. But outside of that, I don't have any updates except to advise that we are in the middle of our work program public hearing. On Tuesday night, we held the in-person meeting. We had staff at the district office that was available to answer questions, but the tentative work program is still online and you're available to make comments through December the 23rd. And I'll give that additional information as a little tidbit in the presentation as well. But we are in the midst of public hearing this week. Like I said, on Tuesday night, we did the in-person. Staff was available on hand to answer any questions in person. But if you go through the work program information and you have questions, or you would like to make a comment, or you want to send that information out to your constituents, you do have that opportunity to send the website to them so that they have an opportunity to check it out and make any comments or ask any questions. And that's available for comments until December the 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henson. Now we go to Cody Johnson for links.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'll give a brief update, starting with the ridership update. Our current weekly average ridership on the weekdays is about 56,653 riders. It's up about 100 since the last time I reported to you all in October. So we're seeing that kind of trend going up, recovering from COVID. We're currently at 72% pre-pandemic, back to pre-pandemic levels. December service change will take into effect December 12th. Major updates with that, like I reported last time, is the Link 612, which is a new route that'll run along Narcoossee Road between US 192 and Lake Nona, along with expanded neighbor links over in Sanford and Oviedo. I have some printouts of those if you want to take a look at those. But that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Are any questions? Thanks. Up next, we have Mr. Fine from Florida Turnpike.
Good morning. My name is Siazi Fine. I'm with Florida Turnpike Enterprise. So today I'll be delivering a presentation about our tentative work program specific to the Florida Turnpike Enterprise. But also I'd like to let you all know that so last night we had our in-person public hearing for the Western Beltway widening from I-4 to Sidell Road. So there was a virtual option that was available Monday night at 5:30, and then we had an in-person public hearing last night at 5:30. I believe we received a single comment about the project, but just an update about that. But with that being said, that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for any of the folks? All right, we're going to action items, and we have 3 action items. First is the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chair, we'll reflect Mr. Ramos's, Councilmember Ramos's virtual or excused absence in the minutes.
Okay, with that one amendment, then the 1 minute, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Mayor Sladak, and do we have a second?
Second.
Second, we'll go right down here with Commissioner Sackett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. All right, we're going to go to approval of FDOT amendment to fiscal year 2022-23 to 26-27, which is in tab 2, and we have Mr. Caskey. Good to have you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I've enjoyed working with you all over the years. So, as Alex said, this is last amendment, and this involves 3 transit projects and includes some additional funding for Lynx's existing limo upgrade project. Then there's a new project for Lynx to purchase 20 electric buses and 5 electric NeighborLink vehicles. And then they're also installing some additional charging stations for those as well. And then there's a new Lynx planning study for locating bus rapid transit stations and transit-oriented development along State Road 436, just north of Orlando International Airport. And you all have some additional information on this amendment request in tab 2 in your packets. So with that, unless there's any questions, we're asking for your approval of the amendment.
Are there any questions for Ms. Caskey? Any roasts to go on? All right, do we have? Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the amendment?
So moved.
We have Mayor Sladak. Do we have a second? Second is Commissioner Sackett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted.
Thank you.
Mr. Caskin, maybe we could slip in a little amendment for you in there and just kidding, of course, for the public. All right, we have Ms. Laurent.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Taylor Laurent, and I'll be presenting the proposed plan revisions to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan today. And before I get ahead of myself, I would like to point out two of the terms that we're going to be hearing a lot today. The first is a modification, which represents a small or minor change to the MTP, whereas an amendment represents a larger or more significant change. So with that, I'll go ahead and dive right in. The first proposed revision is a modification to maintain planning consistency between our MTP and the TIP. And we're classifying this as our TIP refresh. This is an annual update that we've made every year since the adoption of our 2045 MTP, and you'll continue seeing again around this time every year in the future. So with this amendment, it's purely administrative, or this modification, it's administrative, and there are no impacts to existing project cost feasibility. Our second revision is an amendment to incorporate new federal revenues that are being allocated to our planning region. With the implementation of the IIJA, we're receiving additional formula funds through our TMA program, as well as new funds through our carbon reduction program. These new funds over the course of 10 years are expected to add $54.5 million for transportation projects in our area. Again, that's over 10 years, not a single year allocation. And we're going to be equally dividing that funding between our complete streets, bicycle and pedestrian, and TISMO and ITS project needs lists. With that, we will be able to make 11 projects newly cost feasible. Our third amendment is adding additional funds into the program through discretionary grant awards that have been awarded to some of our partners throughout the region. With the incorporation of this new funding, there are no impacts to existing cost feasibility. Amendment number 4 is an adjustment to the Poinciana Parkway project segmentation. So this Poinciana Parkway project has already been documented as a need within our cost feasible plan, so that has not changed. We're just updating the segmentation for the planned implementation that both the Florida Turnpike Enterprise and Central Florida Expressway Authority will be working on over the next several years. So with that, there are no changes to existing cost feasibility. Amendment 5 is the addition of a new project, which will be done in coordination with the Poinciana Parkway project updates by the Central Florida Expressway Authority. There's an additional improvement that's needed along County Road 532, the Osceola Polk Line Road. And with that adjustment and addition of this new project, there are no impacts to other existing project cost feasibility. Then item number 6 is a series of amendments and modifications for planning consistency. These are purely administrative in nature and have been requested by several of our partners over the past few months. So these changes do not have any impacts to existing project cost feasibility. And I will go through and kind of give you a flavor of what the main themes are for these modifications and amendments. For the modifications, you'll predominantly see changes to project descriptions to directly reference safety improvements or operational and safety improvements, making those more specific. You'll see a few adjustments to include local roadway names in addition to the state or county designations to make our lists a little easier to navigate. And you'll see a few adjustments to move project needs between cost feasible tables to better represent the implementing agency of those specific projects. When it comes to the amendments under item number 6, you'll predominantly see adjustments to project limits, either extending the project limit to cover a larger geographic area or shrinking the project limits and splitting the project into multiple phases, again, to make project feasibility and implementation a little bit easier. You'll also see the removal of duplicate project needs, where the project need has either been incorporated into another documented need within our plan, or the scope has been incorporated into other ongoing planning work. And there was a requested revision by our TISMO committee last Friday, to remove an additional duplicate project need, the Poinciana Parkway project from Lysia Brown Road to Trafalgar Boulevard, MTPID 4020. So with the removal of this project, there would be no impacts to project cost feasibility. This was recommended by both the TISMO and TAC last Friday and the CAC yesterday. So we are requesting your recommendation for approval to the plan revisions as they've been presented today, and I will be available to answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions for Ms. Laurent?
I have one question on the amendments for the federal funds from going into the budgets. And I think I'm looking at on page 1 of 3 of the detail. Is it the 3 specific items that were approved federal funding, or is it a general expectation of infrastructure dollars coming in?
Are you referring to the additional formula funds through IIJA or the discretionary grants that have been
I
awarded?
think it was
to our
item number
partners?
2 or 3 on your summary. Number 2.
Number 2. So those fundings, we're estimating to receive the 54.5 million, and we're allocating it to those 3 specific project tables: bicycle and pedestrian, complete streets, and the TISMO and ITS lists,
Okay.
to further advance 11 projects on those.
And so
project
when
needs lists.
we do that, is that sort of the max we're expecting, or those are the ones that we have a high level of confidence we're going to get?
So this matches the allocations that we have received recently through the implementation of the IIJA. The formula fundings we're estimating to go for at least the next 5 years, getting us to our 2050 MTP update or refresh. And the carbon reduction funds we're anticipating to be allocated to us over the next 10 years, again, getting us to that next 2050 MTP, where we'll have a more detailed revenue assessment at that time.
Okay, because I was thinking the infrastructure bill, the guidelines were still under development in some respects. And so do we expect more funding to come in? And the main reason I'm asking is just having to do with the failure of the penny sales tax provision at, a couple of weeks ago. I'm just curious where the revenues are, what the outlook is for the infrastructure bill.
We're being conservative with our estimates purely for those same reasons. We don't want to overcommit or overpromise being able to implement additional projects that we might not be able to get to. So that's why we're going with a 5- and 10-year planning horizon for these 2 additional revenues, again, allowing us to get to that 2050 plan 3 years from now and adjust our revenue estimates at that time.
Okay. Is there a timeline when we think we'll have a real clear vision of what the infrastructure bill could do? Is that a year away, 2 years away?
I know we're in discussions. I'm going to look to Alex
Sure.
to try and get that additional information.
Yeah, sure. So DOT is actually in the process right now of developing the 2050 financial forecast, and the DOT is a very robust, statewide they call it their revenue estimating conference, and they use this for all state revenue sources, and transportation is a subset of that. And as part of that, we get a more refined estimation of how much federal and state funds that we're anticipating to receive and how that would be subdivided to our MPO areas. So as Taylor mentioned, that is ongoing, and they're expecting to wrap that up mid next year. And we'll be presenting that and incorporating that 2050 forecast into our next long range plan update. But since we're hearing some of these discussions and we're already receiving new Infrastructure Act funds and already receiving new carbon reduction funds in current year, we've decided to bring them into the TIP, obviously, and spend them in current year, but also for our long range planning documents and show that same amount forecasted. When we receive the DOT updated forecast, we'll revisit this, but as Taylor mentioned, we're since we're receiving the funds in current year, we kind of need to,
Right.
show those in our long range plan because they are new revenues that we were not expecting when we adopted the 2045 plan. In a conservative approach, I think the FDOT revenue forecast actually shows, or at least the draft is showing those new revenue sources kind of in perpetuity into 2050. Or as Taylor mentioned, we're taking a more conservative approach, just given the life of the bill and potential extensions and other kind of
Right.
economic issues that, bringing the funds that we have into the current current work program, and then 5 years beyond that will allow us to bring some projects in without mismanaging your expectations about what we can deliver and when. So I think that's where we're bringing some in consistent with what we're seeing in current year and what we're seeing over the next few years. Sorry for the long wind, but we're getting ahead of something before DOT provides the formal 2050 forecast.
Yeah, I would love to get just a little smidgen of education on, what the infrastructure bill might look like for the smaller communities that are represented on the advisory board. I know we're probably, except for maybe Apopka, I don't know that.
They're permanent, they're a member of the big.
Yeah, but I don't know that any of us have the size to be a direct applicant for most of these funds. And so we're kind of working through Metro Plan, whereas the city of Orlando and Orange County probably have direct access to, DOT funding.
Right, yeah, tapping into, I use that term, we're applying for and receiving the federal funds that we allocate, our urbanized area funds, whether the carbon reduction funds or what we call our SU funds, the funds that we receive for being an MPO, are eligible to any agency that can have a LAP certification, a LAP certified agency. And that's basically a program that DOT has, certifies your local government agency to procure federal funds. And as I'm kind of going around the table, I know Oviedo's LAP certified, Castleberry has a very robust capital federal program, Winter Springs as well. Winter Park is LAP certified. I know Hong and Charles, Charles Ramdad, will help your kind of LAP construction certification. Maitland and Longwood as well, as I'm kind of going around the table. So really, most municipalities are able, and there are some circumstances where DOT can also help in those extending circumstances where there is a smaller municipality that may not be able to advance projects. That's also where the counties come in to kind of be that intermediary, and so each of you have the ability, or the municipalities have the ability to receive federal funds one way or the other. And I would say in most cases, when you look at our long range plan and TIP, there are probably federal and state funded projects that your staff, are overseeing, over the next 10 years. But for this amendment 2 particularly, we're bringing those new funds in to the top of our budget table, to our ledger, but we're not changing the priorities because we've already prioritized, and this is just new money to advance those priorities a little more expeditiously, but still conservatively, knowing that we don't want to say we're getting, an extra 100 million when we may or may not, just kind of looking at how federal legislation has been extended and curtailed along the way. So again, our conservative 5 to 10 year approach will give us a little bandwidth that we're already seeing in our work program and TIP, without, as I mentioned, going kind of overboard, and then us assuming that, another 40 projects are cost feasible. And then in 2 years, when we do the new forecast, we have to tell you they're not, because, we've refined those estimates. And so.
Okay. Yeah, I probably need a one-on-one time, maybe.
Yeah, and I welcome, again, I think some of that is those orientations, and we can have them one-on-one in group settings as well. Our processes aren't changing. We're just bringing new funds, as I mentioned, into to the same process to expedite. So there's our new revenues flowing into our same funding programs to really advance projects that, in most cases, and you'll hear this in the DOT presentation, would have been on stall because of inflation and cost increases. A lot of these new revenues are actually net neutral as it relates to, so it's more stabilization of budget more than new things in budget. And you're probably seeing that,
Right.
locally as well. So not
Okay.
to steal Virginia's thunder, but that's what you're also seeing in this. That's why while we're adding the new funds, you're not seeing a lot of new projects because a couple months back, we amended the plan and made adjustments to our cost estimation model, which, had some of the inflationary rates included.
Right, we're seeing that in our stormwater stuff. And but I'm not quite as familiar with how it works on DOT other than but that's great. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve the amendment as the amendments as presented by Ms. Laurent?
So
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Oh, and a second.
We have Mayor McCain making the motion. We have Mayor Sladak second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. Thank you very much. All right, we have two presentations today. And the staff has asked that we hold our questions until the presentations end. And the first one is regarding the Rock Springs Road and West Orange Trail projects underway in Apopka. Amy Searmans, is that correct? Great. From VHB, we're presenting today. Welcome and thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Amy Sermons with VHB. I appreciate you having us here. I'm here to talk to you about two different projects, as you mentioned, in Apopka that we're doing for Metro Plan Orlando. It's the Rock Springs Road study as well as the West Orange Trail extension study. So I'll go over briefly an overview of the studies. We did a lot of public outreach. I'll let you know what we heard from the public during the projects, show you the alternatives for both of the projects, and then our next steps for each. So overview on the left, you can see in green is the limits of the West Orange Trail extension study, and in blue are the Rock Springs Road study elements. On the right of the screen is the process for a project. We're here at the very beginning in the planning process. Following planning, as you know, is design, then right away and construction. As I mentioned, we did quite a bit of public outreach during the project. We had two public meetings, one in January of this year and the second one in September. We also did 3 surveys. We did a kickoff survey at the beginning of the project and then 2 additional surveys following each of the public meetings. And we'll show you some of the results from those as we get into the projects. So I'm going to start with talking about the Rock Springs Road study. The purpose of this project or this study was to look at some access management, some operational improvements on Rock Springs, really looking at the Welch Road intersection. We also had a portion of the project that looks at Sandpiper Street, which I'll show you in a bit. So I'll start with the Welch Road and Rock Springs Road intersection recommendations. We're looking at adding dual southbound left turn lanes, adding traffic separators to each leg of the intersection to keep cars from crossing over to opposing traffic lanes. We're providing through lanes for both the eastbound and westbound, as well as dual westbound dedicated right turn lanes. On the bottom, you'll see our results from our public survey coming from the last public meeting. 70% of the respondents are in favor of these improvements. 19% had no opinion, or I'm sorry, 11% had no opinion or were neutral, and 19% did not like those. What we heard from those that were opposed, some of the comments were actually seemed to be related more to the trail, and they were concerned about impacts to the park, which are unrelated to this improvement. Some folks noted the previous work that was done in the area to add these westbound dual right turn lanes. It did not work. Those were kind of an interim improvement without adding the additional storage needed for the right turn lanes. So this study will improve that improvement. There was also some concerns about the resulting access changes with adding the traffic separators in there. So the next improvement is north of the Welch Road intersection. This is the north entrance to the Publix Plaza. Here we're proposing to add a new signalized intersection, adding a dedicated southbound left turn lane that will also have the raised traffic separators to keep cross traffic from coming to opposed lanes. We're also proposing to add westbound dedicated right and left turn lanes out of the plaza onto Rock Springs Road. And then adding new pedestrian crosswalks. 67% of the public that responded was in favor of this improvement. We got 15% that was neutral and 18% that did not like it. Some that didn't like it and some of the questions we received were about the need for a signal at this location. Several noted, again, opposition to impacts to the park, which really are unrelated at this intersection. We received concerns about the resulting access changes and adding additional congestion to the area by adding this signal. The next improvement we are looking at is a mid-block crossing south of Tanglewood Drive and north of the public entrance. We're proposing to first put in the new signal at the public's north entrance, use that as for the pedestrians to cross over. That is one of the main attractions there. And then if we find that people are still crossing at a mid-block location, then we will reconsider looking at this location north of or south of Tanglewood at a later point. We are proposing at this time of adding an RRFB or rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is in the picture on the bottom left, in order to alert drivers that a pedestrian is crossing the street. You can see on the right, public survey, we received 46% were in favor, 31% were neutral, and about 23% did not like it. Those that were opposed did not see the need to add another crosswalk. They felt that the public's signal would be sufficient for crossing. Also, there was concerns for traffic backup along Rock Springs by adding this mid-block crossing. And then concerns for pedestrian safety crossing the road in this location with just the RRFB. Now we're moving further
If I
south.
could
on the
ask a
corridor.
quick question, what is the distance between the Publix and the mid-block?
I believe it's about 600 feet. I don't have the actual number. So moving south on Park Avenue, which is also Rock Springs Road, it changes names as you continue south. We're looking at currently Sandpiper Street comes in at a skew. So we're looking at realigning Sandpiper Street to come in at a better angle there, adding a signal at this intersection. Also, currently there's only sidewalks on the south side on the as you continue east on Sandpiper, and then they're on the north side when you head west. I'm sorry, head east on Sandpiper. So we're looking at filling those gaps of sidewalks on the other side of the street. So public survey, 64% were in favor of this, 23% were neutral, and about 13% did not like it. Those that were concerned or that were opposed were concerned with the realignment, bringing more traffic through the residential area. We also did hear requests for additional safety elements for the trail crossing. Currently, West Orange Trail follows along Park Avenue on the east side and crosses Sandpiper Street at this intersection. We also heard requests for additional bike lanes. I also want to point out that the city of Apopka is moving forward with the design of the Sandpiper Street realignment currently. This next improvement is further north on Rock Springs Road, so north of Welch Road at Leicester, which is the northern end of our project limits. We're proposing to extend the turn lane storage on Leicester Road. So if you're heading to Rock Springs, you'll have more storage lanes there. And also updating the intersection striping at the intersection to make it more visible. Overall, we looked at the anticipated impacts of the project. There's very minimal impacts environmentally, and it improves the community use. We looked at right-of-way drainage. These are all outlined in the report. Ultimately, the construction costs for the Rock Springs Road improvements, as you saw here, are at $6.5 million. For the Sandpiper Street improvements, which is the realignment of signal and the sidewalks, is at $1.6 million. It's not going. Battery died. There we go. Thank you. Okay, now we'll jump over to the West Orange Trail Extension Study. The purpose of this project is to fill the gap from the current ending point of West Orange Trail at Leicester Road up to the Wekiva Trail that's proposed to continue on to Kelly Park Road. We'll also be looking at 2 spurs off of the West Orange Trail, which I'll show you in a moment. This is an overview of the routes. Number 1 here is the main connection of the West Orange Trail along Rock Springs Road. And then one of the spurs is along Welch Road to connect the trail from Rock Springs over to the Wekiva Springs State Park entrance. And then the third piece is the spur along Ponkin Road to connect from Rock Springs Road over to Wolf Lake Elementary and Middle Schools. So starting with the main connection along Rock Springs Road, the proposal is to have the trail run along the east side of Rock Springs Road from Lester Road, where it currently ends, up to essentially up to Kelly Park Road. Well, it'll turn toward the right and then connect to the proposed Wekiva Trail. The public survey results, 75% of respondents were in favor of this alignment. 8% recommended a different trail alignment. We did look at during the study other alternatives that ran closer to the park. And so those were based on those alignments. And then 17% were not in support of all of the trail alignment. What we heard from those that were opposed was the request to have the trail run along the park edge rather than along the roadway. Many were opposed, or many that said they were opposed to funding for the project at all. They'd rather see the funding used in other locations. And then we also heard a lot of concerns for cyclist safety along the trail with a number of driveways and crossings. The next piece is the Welch Road Spur, which again runs from Rock Springs Road over to the park. This will run along the north side of Welch Road. The picture you see on the bottom is a segment where we need to realign the road in order to fit the trail in and the road work and not impact the Wekiva Glen subdivision wall. From here, I'll continue. We go along Sweetwater Park Village. We'll run along the back side of Sweetwater Park Village, connecting back to Wekiva Springs Road, and we'll continue on to the entrance to the park. What we heard from the public on this, actually, we also recommended 2 observation areas along the trail just for people to stop and take a look out over a lake in a nice natural area in the park. 60% of the respondents were in favor of this alignment. 11% would recommend a different trail alignment, and then 29% did not want the trail at all. What we heard the opposition was mainly due to running behind the Sweetwater Park Village. The community is not in favor of this. There was concerns for additional traffic, for homeowner safety, as well as property values in the area by adding the trail. We also heard concerns for wildlife impacts and impacts to the state park. And then concern for new habitat observation areas. There was some thoughts that maybe people could see into a youth camp that is pretty close to where these observation areas are. So now we'll move over to the Pumpkin Road Trail Spur. This runs west from Rock Springs Road over to the middle school and elementary school. This alignment will run on the south side of Pumpkin Road between Rock Springs Road and Vic Road. Vic Road is currently a signalized intersection, so we will then cross the trail over to the north side and then run along the north of Pumpkin Road all the way over to the schools. 83% of the survey respondents were in favor of this. We got 3% that would like to see a different trail alignment, and then 14% who did not recommend the trail at all. Those that wanted the different trail alignment wanted to see the trail completely on the north side for the entire alignment rather than going from the south to the north. And I do need to mention the reason we went to the south was due to right-of-way issues. So we were trying to keep everything with minimal impacts as much as possible.
About how long is this segment?
I should know this. It's a couple miles.
Okay.
I'll get that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. 4, yeah, a couple 4. Some additional feedback we heard. We had some options for people to write in other comments. Additional feedback we heard on the trails themselves were requests for trail parking and trailheads, requests for amenities such as cycle tracks, signage and lighting, a lot of requests for shade trees along the trail, public restrooms and landscaping, and those were not, trail amenities were not studied as part of this study, but just wanted to mention that those were brought up by the public. So we also looked at the environmental impacts and the engineering needs for this, very minimal impacts to the environment. This trail extension and the spurs will bring additional recreation facilities for the community, which we feel is an enhanced improvement for the community. You can see in our reports, we have the right-of-way impacts broken down per each segment, and then estimated construction cost. For the main alignment along Rock Springs Road, the construction cost is at $5 million. For Welch Road is at $5.2 million. That cost does also include that roadway realignment that's needed. And then the Pumpkin Road Spur is at $5.5 million. And I want to point out that these costs do not include the right-of-way estimates. So here's our overall study schedule. We're at the tail end. We started this in March of last year. We are finishing up this month. This is some of our last presentations to get input. We'll incorporate those into our final studies and complete the study, like I said, end of the month. Taylor Laurent, who you heard from earlier, is our project manager for MetroPlan. Here's her contact information. And that's all I have on the presentation. So any questions?
Are there any questions?
Just adding up, this price is about $15 million. And I know that you wanted to know the miles, depends on how fast you run, right? But just wanted to know how many miles versus the amount of money. Is this averaging to about $1 million a mile?
Like I mentioned, the Welch Road spur, that cost does include the realignment of the roadway and some drainage costs. So they're not all exactly the same. So it really isn't a per mile cost necessarily. I would say that that piece of Welch Road spur is probably the most costly of the three because of that need. And then when we run along Rock Springs Road, there's a lot of, it's very tight right away. And there's a lot of elevation change. So we would need to propose some walls. So they all have some slightly different elements in those cost estimates beyond just the trail itself.
Just wanted to have some of that in the future information, because I know that a lot of constituents always ask me, how much does it cost per mile? Isn't it? So I want to have an average. It doesn't have to be exact, just so we can have it.
Right.
If I can, Commissioner, we do have and I can provide it to you guys just at general unit cost averages, DOT, and we provide those just for general kind of talking point purposes. As Amy mentioned, it gets really nuanced when you talk about a specific corridor, because this 500 feet could cost 5 times as much as the next, 2 miles.
Right.
But I'll send that out to the group. We have that for some planning purposes, we call them long range planning estimates. So we can say a trail costs this, a 2-lane road costs that, widening from 2 to 4 costs this. But also know during this inflationary period, a mile used to cost this and now it costs 50 to 150% of what it did. So we're in an interesting period, but I can provide you what DOT has publicly available. For sure. No, I hear you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
That's
No concern yet for trailhead parking, but where am I going to park? At Publix parking lot or that sort of thing? I noticed on our bike trails going through Longwood and things that if we have trailhead, the bike trails are used more. And I'm also curious as to, with these e-bikes coming in that go 20 miles an hour, how do we fit those into what we're making? It's almost like they need a different lane or I'm going to hit the kid on a stroller or something like that. But I'm worried about trailhead parking. Where are people going to park? And when you said that, you were saying about going behind one of these neighborhoods. I can see where they'd be concerned that there'd be parking along there. So
right.
hopefully you address that somewhere.
Yeah, so with the tie-in of the main trail to West Orange Trail, it connects to a regional system, and there are trailheads to the south on West Orange Trail. I believe it's about a mile or so. And then also once it connects to Wakaiva Trail, I know there's a trailhead around 429. So depending on your user, how far they're wanting to go on the trail, you've got some folks that'll go 20, 30 miles versus a couple miles. I'm sorry. Right. So there's the Publix parking lot. As far as the e-bikes go and e-scooters, we have heard that concern. I know that's a regional concern of how those are addressed on trails. They are becoming more popular and they are an issue with the different speeds, as you mentioned. I think each area may have their policies on what's allowed, what's not allowed, but then ultimately it comes down to enforcement. If they're not allowed, we didn't address necessarily putting a separate lane for e-bikes on those, so I don't know that they're not necessarily encouraged to be on the trail, but that is an ongoing issue. I don't know if they're not precluded either, or they're not precluded, right? So it's an ongoing discussion, I guess I'll say, in the industry. And Taylor got the lengths of the sections. Thank you, Taylor, for me. For the Pumpkin Road section, it's approximately 2.5 miles. For Welch Road is about 3 miles. And then the main spur on Rock Springs Road is about 4 miles.
I do have a follow-up question on all that. It appears that it's $15 million for recreation, that these roads, or these trails don't really go to places. They don't connect places people want to go. It's like, I want to see nature, so I'm going to go on a $15 million trail. And I guess the question, this may be more for you guys, is do we have big pots of money that we have to use it or lose it, that we're dying to burn on recreation? Or do we have the option moving forward to tweak it and maybe focus the funding on things that get people between places they currently go in cars, but could instead go, yeah, I ride my bike everywhere, but I'm not going to go on any of these trails. I wish you'd come to Oviedo and put some trails in, or, do some connectivity there. So that's hopefully something we can.
I'll start if you want to jump in. And I brought up, it doesn't show the full map, that the Orange County Trails Master Plan, which identifies all of the trail locations. And with that main connection, connecting the West Orange Trail to Wakaiva Trail, and it also connects the neighborhood lakes eventually to the coast to coast. Piece by piece, the region is looking at getting these, not just for recreation, but they can be used for other, as a mode of transportation. And so I think, it's just kind of filling those gaps as we can to make another network for bicycle and pedestrians. And I don't know if Taylor had more to add to that.
Just a little bit of history to bring into it. So each of these individual project needs have been identified as project needs in our MTP. So we were able to step in on behalf of our partners at Orange County and the city of Apopka to advance the planning study and start identifying the feasibility of trails for design and future construction. So this is a way to accelerate some of that planning work.
One day the commute may be comparable, and the commute time may be comparable between the trail and I-4.
And at the same time, we also see.
And I have a couple of questions, if I may. That's
Hang on,
okay.
hang on.
Back to Mr. Ramos's concern, we're also here, we just looked and we saw 15 million, but earlier it was up about 8 million. Was that 8 million that was discussed earlier for, I guess, the Rock Springs Road? Is that also part of that 15 million that you showed at the end, or is it 15 million plus 8 million? Is it 23 million really we're talking about?
So those are separate. So what you see on the screen now, the 6.5 million is for the Rock Springs Road, which is the Welch Road intersection improvements, Lester Road, the whole segment that we walked through on Rock Springs itself. And then the 1.6 is for the Sandpiper Street improvements. And then that 15 million are the three different segments of the West Orange Trail. So we tried to break them down into, I guess, reasonable chunks of funding sources so that these projects can be done separately as needed as funding becomes available as well.
Okay. And I got a couple other things, but the e-bikes, just so to share with you, Volusia County has banned all the e-bikes on the beach. So I have a little beach house, and you're not allowed to have them. At first they were on there, they were doing 25 miles an hour down the beach, and even in the driving part of the beach, it's 10 mile an hour. So these guys are more than doubling it. So I don't know, how we look at that in the future, but it's really the new moped. So, it's more really of a vehicle, right? Then I wanted to address, there were some concerns with your survey. And I guess if you would talk about, your outreach with these surveys. I saw like 225 people. Where were these neighbors? Were they random people you just chose from all over different parts of the Apopka area? And then could you address how you address the concerns of people? I think, I took some really quick notes. I think one was on the West Orange part, it was the driveways and crossing concerns. And then I think with the walkway over on Rock Springs Road, it was the traffic backup, and there was also some concerns of maybe too many crosswalks. But
Right.
How did you address those concerns?
Sure. So I'll start with the survey, how we did the outreach, and Metro Plan Orlando did a great job at getting the word out. We used social media. We used contact lists that we had. So We also did yard signs along the roadway and along the trail. So people could go out that maybe don't live in the area, but they might be trail users or traveling through. So we try to capture all of the different users and not just people right around the corridor. So that sent them a link over to the survey. As we continue through the project, we had a project website, we still have a project website. People could go on, join the mailing list, and then they would continue to get the notices about the survey. So it was a very, very broad outreach on who we sent the surveys to or who could take them. So that's the first part. As far as how we address those comments, as comments came in from the survey, I know Taylor received a lot of emails and phone calls, and we got information from each of the community meetings, whether it was a written comment. We individually responded to each of these folks on their particular concerns. You know, what I talked about was kind of the summary of what we heard. And then I guess specifically the one about the neighborhood. We did get a large constituent from the neighborhood showed up at the September public meeting. We listened, we responded to their comments there. We also heard from a lot of other folks that weren't in that community that were in favor of it. You know, this happens quite often in transportation projects where we have many, some opposed and some for. A lot of the comments that we heard also from Sweetwater Park Village are related to some elements that are going to happen in the next stage in design. You know, what are the fencing going to be? You know, they wanted a lot of specifics that we can't answer at this stage. And Orange County, City of Apopka were right there with us during all of these meetings. And Orange County has committed to continue that coordination with the community and when it moves on to the next phase. So they are basically going to take our list of information and continue that as these projects move forward. And so I guess essentially we tried to answer each of these as they came in. I don't know if I answered your question, if that was a roundabout.
One more comment with what Ms. Mayor said. Eventually, the money that we spend on these trails, besides leisure, is gotta have some end point that's gonna benefit the community. And I know that, I don't know if you guys have done comparison with other segments of the trail. We have Killarney Station in Oakland down through Winter Garden into Apopka, but they all end up either at an industrial park where there's, people who work there, who bike to work, or, residential town centers where they're going to go to restaurants and so forth. And so during the weekends in those areas, people put away their car, travel on bike or walk or run to their restaurant or their farmer's market. I don't see no final destinations here that's going to, benefit having a lot of residents on that trail. In that segment I'm speaking of in West Orange, there's over 100,000 people there on that trail throughout the year. I mean, we're building this for 500 people, 1,000 people. Is there going to be any thought into the final destinations?
Well, ultimately, the connection along the main route there, the West Orange Trail, not the spurs, but the main connection there is going to have that destination because there are several regional destinations, as you connect to Wekiva Trail, as you connect further south, they could hop on anyway, at 429 or wherever the different trailheads are and connect to the existing amenities, existing destinations. I'm sure I'm getting that out right.
Mayor McCann.
If I can, with all due respect to my friends here, in my understanding is I would respectfully disagree. Can you pull the map back up? I know that in my community, the Cross Seminole Trail is an integral part of our community. And what it does is it daisy chains along between the high school, our town center, Layer Elementary, our industrial park, and it kind of and through our county parks and through our city parks, it meanders through and kind of goes back and forth. And so as we see in this diagram, we see the Northwest Recreation Complex is just north Wolf Lake Elementary School, then Wolf Lake Middle School, and then it ties into Rock Springs Elementary School. And so what we see is this daisy chain of things and then connects with the state park, which is phenomenal. So when we start seeing these, it might not suit everyone's needs, but what we're building is infrastructure here that will eventually lead into the longer trails that are regional trails as opposed to some of these things. I think we do get some of those
recreational uses and we get some of those A to B parts where we're helping. These kinds of things, I would argue, really help a community. They really do. I know that in our community, our Cross Seminole Trail has been, it's incredibly popular, and it ties all of our little pieces and all of our schools together and all those different things.
Mayor Sladek?
That's a 6-mile section and it does have all of those things. So every half mile or so you hit something new. And I'm looking over here, if Welch Road only has one subdivision on one end, I mean, we're getting kind of on the, we're going off on a tangent here, huh?
There's actually a lot south of Welch Road is all subdivisions. You can't really see.
But
it. I
how
mean,
far do you have to go to get on there? Like the thought of taking your bike on a car to go to a trailhead and park. I mean, it just blows my mind.
I think Alex is going to hopefully conclude.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can kind of put this into in a next step. So, the work that we're doing here, is a detailed study, taking, a long range need that was been in Orange County's plans and been in our long range planning documents as a line on a map, just that for a long time. This is providing the substance necessary to carry it forward. The next phases of this is the planning step. The next phases are unfunded. So some of the, what's next, who's next, how's next. I'm hearing some of that. So I want to dampen, that with, as we go through the active transportation plan, Taylor presented on that last month. That's when, at your last meeting, that's when we're really going to be talking about identifying all of our regional trails, all of our regional side paths, all of our regional bicycle and pedestrian needs, whether they're recreational, whether they're for commute or any other trip in between, because we are providing a transportation system for all uses, all trip types. Where I'm going with this is I would recommend as we get to the next steps of our active transportation plan, that's when we're maybe, again, documenting those regional needs, all of these trails, new spurs, and we're going to be recommending an evaluation and prioritization approach. So that's where when I'm hearing some of your concerns, it's which ones first and why, and cost is kind of part of that. So the active transportation plan is going to be conducting an accessibility analysis. So it's really looking at essential services and serving those trips and how the infrastructure benefits from kind of that relationship. So what I'm hearing, I don't think is necessarily against this project particularly. I would say it's more the broader regional trail, regional prioritization and implementation of all of those trail needs. And I think that's where I'm liking what I'm hearing. So as we work through our next steps and next presentations with the active transportation plan, this feedback is going to be extra important as we develop that next approach, say which trail project, which sidewalk project goes first and why. And that's when the selection evaluation of recreational destinations versus serving an accessibility need versus serving a safety need versus serving all of those needs maybe to some degree. And we'll have that evaluation. And I think your feedback in this discussion, I think, is good fodder for kind of our for staff to really start rethinking some of our evaluation approaches to get to next steps. But this particular project is unfunded in its next phases. So we'll have our more systematic regional evaluation process to get us our next cost feasible trail priorities. Hope that provides a bookend to the good feedback that I did hear this morning from you guys.
Thank you, Alex. Let's go to, and thank you, Amy, very much.
You're welcome.
Let's go
Thank
to the
you.
next presentation, which we have Mr. Fine and Ms. Henson. You want to come up and tell us about the fiscal year 2023-24 to 27-28 tentative 5-year work program.
Yes, good morning again. I'm Rakinya Henson from District 5 FDOT, and the information I have this morning is in regards to the FDOT work program. And just to make sure that we're all speaking the same language, when we mention the department work program, that is actually referencing our 5-year listing of transportation needs that are planned for the upcoming 5-year period. It includes public transit, seaports, airports, and rail projects. It also takes into account transportation planning, our transportation systems management and operations, which we like to call TISMO, engineering and design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction activities. And although FDOT is not the lead agency for the aviation and seaport or transit projects, these projects are included in our district's work program. It also includes those, the MPRIO priorities, where we work in tandem with the transportation planning organizations and our community partners to develop what those priorities will include. And each district does that for the state of Florida. As I mentioned earlier, we are right now in the middle of the work program public hearing, which means basically every person has the opportunity. That's each individual. Mr. Joe Smith has the opportunity to go online. The work program public hearing, the link is there, but it's also very simply fdot.gov/WPPH for work program public hearing. They can go there, make comments, ask questions. Like I said earlier, we did have that in-person availability on this past Tuesday, but they have until December the 23rd to make those public comments because we have to tidy up all these loose ends and make our district program has to submit to central office our final District 5 tentative work program due in March to central office, because it also has to go to the state legislature, which begins in March of next year. In review, and I think we've said this, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 times already today, kind of alluding to the effect of inflation in the work program. And as you can see on the slide there, we have seen significant increases across the board. As you see there, for projects, we're looking at materials, increases, and also labor shortages have to be taken to an account as well. There's premium pricing for certain certain materials in regards to electrical and steel, and all of that weighs in on the price that we have to make accommodations for. Additionally, we've experienced limited competition where we've had single bids that come in significantly higher than before, which means we have to put the bid out again and different things like that, which means it extends the timing that we're looking at, which means we're also looking at a higher price because it's a later time. So all of these things taken into account gives us that effect on the inflation that we've been kind of alluding to. I know Alex has made mention of it this morning. FDOT has made mention of it across the board. We've also seen impacts with our right-of-way acquisitions. And as you see on the slide there, that we've seen approximately a 15% increase on land prices, which we have to make adjustments for as well. Excuse me. And when we talk about building the tentative work program, these are the allocations, excuse me, that include safety projects, system preservation and maintenance objectives, which are all falling under state statutes that we have to include. Maintaining bridges, the pavement conditions of highways are taken into account, because when we refer to the work program, we're looking at that 5-year period, and we have to make sure that we're taking into account all of the infrastructure needs that are going to happen, and also the adjustments to growth factors as well. And after and I'm using the term building and balancing, because building, like I said, we have those conversations with our partners that helps put into perspective what that 5-year work plan will look like. And then we have to look at the other side of it as well. That means balancing the tentative work program. When we look at all the projects that we would like to include, we have to take into account how much it's going to cost us to be able to provide those services. Excuse me. And that's leveraging the different fund sources that we have, but also taking into account, like I said, what we're statutorily obligated to consume as well. So there are certain extenuating circumstances that the district has to address. And then there's opportunities that we would like to bring in new projects and to continue to fund those projects across the district. We'll go into what that actual funding looks like now and also some of the breakdowns by county and then some of those projects as well. For our region, you see we have Orange, Osceola, and Seminole County, and you see the total across, you see that 5-year work program. Again, it's a 5-year tentative program that we're discussing. You see the breakdown by each year, what that total looks like on the far right-hand side in gray for each county. Then at the bottom gray area, what that total looks like for each fiscal year, and then what that total looks like on the 5-year outlook for all of the counties combined. And then this slide gives you, like I said, the breakdown when we're talking about priority projects, those 18 priority projects, what they look like in regards to the project type and what that funding looks like based on county. So this kind of breaks it down specifically by county and also by type of project as well. Excuse me. We're going now into some of those key projects. And the first one is the I-4 wrong way driving. And this is the driving detection program that will happen at a specific intersection, I-4 ramps, I'm sorry. The first one, we have project on State Road, I-4 from State Road 482, which is Sand Lake Road to the Seminole County line. You see the tentative monies available and construction for fiscal year 23-24, and also an additional project on I-4 from west of State Road 42, which is Sand Lake Road to the Osceola Polk County line. You see the funding there as well, and the construction for that in the same year of 23-24. Also in Orange County, we have 2 projects here listed. We have State Road 46 from US 441 to Seminole County line, a resurfacing project, and also State Road 50 from Chuliota Road to State Road 520, which is a widening project. Excuse me, and the funding is listed there for each of those projects as well. Additionally, we have, and these are just some highlights of some of the different projects. This is not encompassing all of the projects for Orange County. We have here State Road 438 from Lake Stanley to Hiawassee, a road safety project, and also a road surfacing project, Fairbanks to South Park Avenue. I see some applause in the audience already. Again, this is not all encompassing. This is just a high level view of some of those projects in Orange County. We have the Shingle Creek Trail. This is phase 4, funded in fiscal year 25-26, and then construction funded in fiscal year 27-28, and also University Boulevard at Dean Road, intersection improvements. We have construction funded in fiscal year 23-24. And lastly, the Orange County Gap segment from Hiawassee to North of State Road 414, railroad coordination and construction funded for fiscal year 25-26. And I neglected to mention, when we're referencing to fiscal year, for the state, the fiscal year always starts in July 1 of a certain year and runs through June 30th of the next year. So when this says fiscal year 25-26, that means it begins, that fiscal year will start July 1 of 25 and ends out in June 30th of 26. And I neglected to mention that earlier. Moving over to Osceola County, we have the John Young Parkway at Pleasant Hill Road intersection improvements, right of way funded in fiscal year 24-25 through 25-26. And then construction funded for 26-27. We do have, this is a new sequence number. This was originally under a phase 6, and we kind of combined the right of way and the construction all under one umbrella of the sequence -7 for us. Also, we have State Road 60. There's passing lanes from Blanket Blaze Law to Pinevine Trail, I'm sorry. And you see here the funding for this project, as well as we have design, right of way, and construction funded for this particular project in Osceola. Next, we have US 192 from Bamboo Lane to Main Street, a resurfacing project, and that's construction in fiscal year 24-25. Moving over to Seminole County, State Road 434 from 436 to Mobile Avenue, a resurfacing where we have construction for this project in our work program for fiscal year 27-28. And we also have State Road 434 at County Road 427, which is Ronald Reagan Boulevard intersection improvements. And we are looking at right of way in this funding cycle for fiscal year 23-24. Additionally, we have State Road 436 addressing the pedestrian detection system, which is encompassed in our ITS, which is the Intelligent Technology System, from North Lake Boulevard to Boston Avenue. We have construction operations and the ITS funded in fiscal year 23-24. We also will have some discussion in regards to some of the deferrals that we've had that we need to highlight. And this is in regards to our lap projects. What you see here listed is Orange County. Excuse me, we have phase 2 of the Pine Hills Trails where we've just deferred construction from fiscal year 24-25 out to fiscal year 26-27, and then construction support deferred from 24-25 out to 26-27, and that's based on coordination with our local partners. Also in Orange County, we have the St. Andrews Trail from Katy Way to Aloma Avenue, where we're deferring out construction to 26-27 and construction support deferred out to 26-27, again, based on coordination with our local partners. Moving to Seminole County, we have construction for Sunset Trail Drive, 1792 and Sunset Drive Trail, construction deferred out from current year over to 24-25, and construction support deferred from current year over to 24-25. I'm sorry, I'm saying current year. We're still in 22-23 right now. This is 23-24, which will not start until July 1 of next year. My apologies on that one. Also in Seminole County, we're looking at design for East Church Street and North Ronald Reagan Boulevard to US 1792, deferring design out to 23-24, and construction support deferred out to 24-25. And these are again based on coordination with local agencies. Alex mentioned earlier about local agencies being LAP certified, and these are coordination projects where we're deferring those out. Additionally, in Seminole County, we have 4 other projects in the area that are being deferred. State Road 434, 2 projects on the left-hand side being deferred out. And then on the right, we have a State Road 46 from 1792 to Mellonville Avenue, a resurfacing that's being deferred. And also in Seminole County, State Road 419 and Little Wekiva River Bridge, where we have design being deferred, construction being deferred, and then construction support being deferred out as well. And that excuse me, that design is being deferred out to accommodate some of the other statutorily bridge rehabilitations that have to happen as well. Excuse me. In Osceola County, we're looking at 2 projects, the John Young Parkway at Pleasant Hill Road intersection improvement, construction and construction support being deleted. And again, the project itself is not being deleted. We've just moved these under one umbrella of segment 6 instead of, I'm sorry, we've deleted segment 6 and moved it all under one segment, which is now segment 7 under that project. And then an additional deletion in Osceola County, 1792 from County Road 54 to west of Ponciana Boulevard widening. And the design is deleted and moved to a segment. So again, these projects are not being deleted from the work program. The segment work is just being moved under a different segment under the same project, just to align with design limits that are already occurring. excuse me, I tried to get through that as quickly as possible. I am not Catherine Alexander Corbin. I'm here on her behalf. She is our program management administrator, but I am available to take back any information on questions that you may have for us in regards to the tentative work program.
Are there any questions? You give your voice box a break.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's fine.
Good morning. My name is Siasi Fine and I'm with the Florida Turnpike Enterprise. So today I'll be presenting on the Florida Turnpike Enterprise's tentative work program for fiscal years 2024 through fiscal year 2028. So in Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties, the Turnpike is proposing to fund $1.4 billion in major projects. So before we start, there's this blue document. Believe you guys should have received a copy. If not, it should be available in the back. So my presentation is actually based on this document. Whether you're listening to the presentation or you're reading this document, it should be the same information. But we'll come back to this document later on, and I'll explain a little bit about the tables that are included. So there are turnpike facilities in 6 FDOT districts and 19 counties. Here's a map that depicts the facilities that are in the Metro Plan Orlando area. So parts of the Turnpike Main Line have been around since 1957. But as far as the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, we're fairly new. We've been around for 20 years, starting in 2002. As one FDOT team, we follow the department's vision and mission as we help meet the state's transportation needs, ensuring value to customers, protecting investors, and managing the Turnpike in a business-like manner. So in the past 20 years, there are a couple trends that we've noticed, and starting with Florida's population, it's gone up by 31%. Registered vehicles in the state has gone up by 37%. And being talking Turnpike specific, Turnpike system vehicle miles traveled has actually gone up 80%. So to meet these transportation needs, we have to spend money. So we receive money through user tolls and concessions received at our service plazas. And with that money, first we have to pay for operation and maintenance costs. And this includes the cost to collect and process toll payments. Next, we must pay off debt on the bonds issued to construct major projects. It should be noted that due to our high credit rating, the Turnpike has historically benefited from some of the lowest borrowing costs in the toll industry. And then after that, we pay for renewal and replacement projects. And these are our resurfacing projects or recurring improvement projects on our facilities. And then finally, we pay for capital improvements. And these are our widening projects, our interchange projects. Okay. So the Turnpike has various ways of determining how projects get funded depending on the project type. First and foremost, the projects must demonstrate a transportation need and prioritized accordingly. Each year, we looked at observed traffic data and future projections across the entire system. Of course, we look at environmental and economic feasibility. And then most importantly, we collect stakeholder input throughout the process. So with these next few slides, I'll be discussing projects that have construction funding within the encompassed 5-year work program. So that's from fiscal year 2024 to fiscal year 2028. If it has construction funding within it, then I'll speak about it. So starting in Osceola County, we have a widening project on the Turnpike Main Line from Parton Settlement Road to north of Osceola Parkway. This includes interchange improvements at milepost 249. And this project has construction funding in fiscal years 2024 and fiscal year 2026. Next, we have a widening project on the Turnpike Main Line from US 192 to Parton Settlement Road. And this has interchange improvements at milepost 242. And this has construction funding in fiscal year 2026. And then the last project on the slide is the widening of the Turnpike Main Line from milepost 239 to milepost 242 with the construction of a new full interchange at Nolte Road. This has design build funding in fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2026. Staying in Osceola County, we have the resurfacing of the southern connector, State Road 417 from milepost 0 to milepost 4. And this has construction funding in fiscal year 2025. And then we have the Canoe Creek Service Plaza parking improvements. And this has construction funding in fiscal year 2026. And then the final project on this slide is the resurfacing of the Turnpike Main Line from milepost 227 to milepost 235 with construction funding in fiscal year 2024. Now going into Orange County, we have the construction of a new interchange on the Turnpike Main Line at Sand Lake Road, which has construction funding in fiscal years 2024 and fiscal year 2026. Next, we have the interchange improvements on the Turnpike Main Line at Beach Line Expressway West, State Road 528, and at US 1792. And this has construction funding spanning from fiscal years 2027 through fiscal year 2028. And then finally, on this slide, we have the construction of a new interchange on the Turnpike Main Line at Taft Island Road. And this has construction in fiscal years 2027. Continuing in Orange County, we have a Tismo interchange improvements on Turnpike Main Line at Ocoee State Road 50 with construction in fiscal year 2025. We have another Tismo interchange improvement project on the Beach Line West at John Young Parkway. And this is has construction funding in fiscal year 2026. Again, another Tismo interchange improvement project on the Beach Line or on the Western Beltway at US 192 with construction in fiscal year 2025. And then finally on this slide, we have the resurfacing of the southern connector from milepost 4 to milepost 6 with construction in fiscal year 2025. So this project is a project that spans from Orange County to Brevard County. And it is an ITS improvement project on the Beach Line East Expressway, State Road 528. And this project has construction funding in fiscal year 2024. In Seminole County, we have the resurfacing of the Seminole Expressway from milepost 50 to milepost 55, which has construction in fiscal year 2025. And the final project on this slide is the widening of the Seminole Expressway from Maloma Avenue to State Road 434 with interchange improvements at milepost 38, milepost 41, and milepost 44 respectively. And that project has design build funding in fiscal year 2024. Before I leave the tentative work program summary, I'd like to discuss the document a little bit. So page 1 of this document actually has this table in the beginning. And this table actually reflects projects that are currently under construction or will be in construction in fiscal year 2023, which is the current fiscal year. And it's just letting you know what we have going on, what's currently being built on the Turnpike facilities. And then going to the back on pages 14 and 15, these are projects that have PD&E design or right-of-way funding, but do not have construction funding associated with these projects. So of course, they're going to be in these back tables, not in the main tables. And this is kind of to show you guys what's coming up, what you can look forward to in the future from the Turnpike. But yeah, the entire document is actually a three-piece. You have the current construction, you have construction within the 5 years, and then you have design and right of way and PD&E, but no construction associated. So for more information on all projects in the Turnpike's tentative work program, you can visit the FDOT Work Program Public Hearing website and download the District 5 Public Hearing Report when available. Turnpike projects in Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties can be found in this document. But with that being said, I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to present the tentative work program. And if there are any questions, I'll take them now.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
One thing right before a couple of housekeeping things, I was contacted by Mayor Gardner, and she has been here to most every meeting. And I guess it was a mix up between her assistant and her attendants. And so it was, she has a work conflict. She couldn't be here for that. So I'd like to make a motion that we also note an excuse absence for Mayor Gardner. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please note that. All right, so there are several items under general information of tab 4 for your agenda packets. Take a look. Mark your calendars for our next MAC meeting, which will be February 2nd. And the next Metro Plan Orlando Board meeting will take place here on Wednesday, December 14th. At this time, are there any final comments from any members?
I just have one question. I think some of us were hopeful that the penny sales tax would have passed and, would have had an impact on Sunrail and expanded service and all that kind of thing. And are we going to get a report sort of on what my guess is that we're going to continue to do things the way that we're currently doing them without any significant changes? Do we have a report on that, or just sort of managing expectations in the near future?
Yeah, I would have to lean.
Besides, it's not coming in. The money.
Yeah, besides the revenue not generating, beginning January 1st, I would have to speak to my counterparts at Orange County, given that they, it's kind of their initiative,
Right.
not Metro plans, but we can follow up on that. As it relates specifically to our work, our plans, they were adopted, through a scenario planning process, and the scenario that was adopted had an existing funding sources in place. So our plans are actually consistent with the absence of a sales tax. Unfortunately, it would have been great news to, see those projects be expedited. But our current long range plan does have Orange County's tax structure as it's currently in place as of now. So without the penny sales tax in place.
Okay. And I think I just didn't know if there was an adjustment that would be contemplated in next year's work plan of any type for, things like federal funding coming in. So I know it's sort of led by Orange County, but is there anything we should be doing as an advisory board having to do with Sunrail?
Sunrail specific?
Yeah.
Be wrapping it under links.
Yeah, let me come back to you on that one. I don't want to speak out of context on that, on kind of this board's or this committee specific kind of role in Sunrail. Of course, if there is, discussion to be had and opinions and kind of action, if there's a statement that this committee wants to take, certainly. But obviously, there is the Sunrail or the Commuter Rail Commission that actually oversees that in its next steps, in the core funding partners, being the counties and the city of Orlando. But I'll follow up with more on that because it's very complicated, especially with the sales tax not passed.
If there's anything mentioned at next week board meeting, I'll be glad to bring it back. But I think we've read recently that Mayor Demick's plans to possibly put it back up again in 24, which would be unusual in terms of one after the other, but I'm sure we'll hear more.
Great. Thank you.
If there are any Comments online, use your raise hand function or the *9. Are there any requests?
There are no requests online.
All right, thank you. Then do I have a
Oh, I got one last thing to say.
Oh, you-
We're not gonna see each other till February 2nd. We're not gonna see each other till February 2nd. I just want to wish everybody happy holidays. Enjoy your time with their friends and family during these happy days that we have ahead of us.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, I second, all in favor, stand. Please show us adjourned.